Welcome to Maqam Lessons. In this lesson today, I'm going to teach you how to learn a simple piece of music by ear. Before we get started, a huge shout out and thanks to all of my Patreon supporters out there. You guys are totally awesome. It's been really helping me continue to make these lessons. And for those of you who are not supporters yet, if you can afford a simple monthly contribution, like the cost of lessons for $10 a month, something like that, check out the link below to my Patreon page, and please support me. That'll help make more lessons. I also want to give a big shout out to the Brooklyn Maqam folks who have been an amazing support for Arabic music in New York City, where I live, for a few years, starting in 2018. They've been totally awesome, so check out their website. There's still some activities that they've been doing in 2020 and 2021, and I may offer some classes through them soon. So please check out Brooklyn Maqam Hang. Big shout out to John, Morandi, and Brian. Okay, so we're going to learn how to learn by ear. And this is a very important lesson, especially for instrumentalists, if you don't have practice in doing this. And so the first question is, why should you learn by ear? Why not just have notation? And some people ask me, oh, can I have notation for this musical piece? Do you have notation for Kulthum's song, blah, blah, blah? And the answer that I give to everybody who asks me these questions is, learning music from notation is just like learning a foreign language only by reading it and never hearing it, and trying to make the sounds and trying to sound idiomatic only by reading text. And this is kind of an obvious thing for a lot of people to understand, because you realize that there's so much that you lose when you focus just on the text. Text reduces the amount of information. And the same is true of musical notation. So if you learn a piece of music by ear, and you don't really know everything about the musical genre, and you haven't heard that music, you're going to still play it as though you're playing whatever kind of music you're already used to. You're not going to really get it. There's a lot of musical information that's missing if you learn through notation. And developing this skill, which is the point of this lesson, is going to help you learn a lot more repertory. And really experienced musicians from any kind of music around the world, whether it's Arabic music, which I do, or a lot of other kinds of music, most music in the world is learned by ear. And for most of human history, people have been learning music by ear. Notation is a relatively recent history, but we have in our minds the ability to learn by ear, and children know how to do it. So that's sort of the why. It's really a fundamental part of music. I won't go more into it. If you need persuasion on that fact, that's maybe the subject of another discussion. So then the question is how? The how is really simple. It's really just about imitation. But the other thing to add to imitation is about understanding how much you are able to process at once in terms of hearing and copying. And we're going to experiment a little bit with that in this lesson. And that's something you're going to have to gauge for yourself. Can I learn a large chunk, or can I learn a small chunk? And you don't want to judge yourself for where you are. If you find this lesson difficult, that's fine. If you find it easy, that's fine too. The key is to keep practicing and developing this skill so that you get better and better. It's a muscle, just like any other musical skill. And I've been doing this for about 20 years. I first learned how to learn by ear in the year 2001 when I traveled to Egypt. And I still learn all of my repertory by ear. I'm still learning lots of repertory every year. And I've gotten to the point where I can learn a piece of music in about an hour, a complicated piece of music in about an hour, not like the one I'm about to show you, which is a little easier. And that's muscle. That's practicing every week, learning new pieces by ear. And so that's what you want to do. If you do that in whatever genre of music you're doing, even if it's not Arabic music, you'll start to build that muscle and have a lot of repertory, and then you will develop the flexibility to be able to do a lot of different things and have a better understanding what's going on in the music. So that's a lot of preamble. We're going to start with the first step for how is listening. So I'm going to now play for you the piece that we're going to learn by ear. It's called Dulab Rast. I'm going to play it for you in its entirety. Just listen to it first. So that's the piece. It sets the mood for Maqam Rast. Which we've been exploring in some of these other lessons. So if you've already taken some of the other Maqam lessons, you'll have had some experience with this. And the Dulab is a very simple instrumental piece that sets the mood. It makes it easy for you to start improvising, singing, or playing another song. So pause the video and go back and listen one more time. So now if you've listened again and you start to hear it in your ear and you start to get with the melodies, you want to start when you're approaching a new piece of music just by getting a sense of what's going on. You probably noticed if you listen twice that there's a melody that repeats 3 times at the beginning, then another melody, and then another set of melodies, one that repeats twice, and then an ending melody. So it's like 4 different melody components. So that's the first thing you do. You look big picture. What is it that I have to learn right now? How much work am I going to have to do to learn? So that's the first step. You want to listen, get it familiar in your ear. The second step is understanding how to choose a chunk of music that you can play by ear. So I'm going to give you one that for some of you is going to be too long, but I want you to try it. I'm going to play one phrase and I want you to copy it on your instrument. Go ahead, copy. How did that go? Did you get all of it? If you did, great. That's the whole first melody, and you've already learned 1 chord of the piece. If that was too much for you to learn at once, you have a couple different options. You can try just repeating it whole. So let's try that again. I'm going to play it again whole. Go ahead. Okay? So now if that was hard, the next thing to do is say, okay, I can't do the whole thing in one repeat. I'm going to break it down even smaller. So I'm going to start and I'm going to break it down for you. And when you're learning by ear, and for the most part, you're going to be doing this through recordings unless you have a teacher, in which case you probably don't need me to teach you how to do this. But you're going to be doing this a lot with recordings. And I do this with recordings. So it's like you play a phrase from the recording as long as it goes and you pause. So I'm acting like the recording of the song. You could actually just go back to what I recorded at the beginning. So I'm going to give you a little piece. And you just, if you're listening to the recording, you just play it that much, pause. So here's a little piece. Try it. Here it is again. Let's try again. Great. Now, for many of you, you already got that. But maybe you didn't get all the details, or maybe you're not quite sure if you got it. So I'm going to show you again how to approach what is going on. So you want to start by listening. What's the first note of the phrase? And this last phrase that I played for you, first note was this. Okay, so the first step, if you had trouble with that, is find that note on your instrument. Here, I'm going to play it for you. Can you play it? If you're not sure, let's try singing it. Ah. Now sing. Ah. Now use your voice and help you find it on the instrument. Here's how I would do it. Okay, I hear, is the first note. There it is on my instrument. Okay, you see how the process works. You calibrate based on how much you're able to do easily. Now, for those of you who are still not sure, did I get it right? That opening note was an A natural. Okay? Now, my violin is tuned in a particular kind of Arabic tuning. For those of you who are violinists out there, my violin is tuned G, D, G, C. If you're an oud player, you'll find that my top 3 strings are tuned the same as your top 3 strings. D, G, C. So this A is here. If you're playing a Western tuned violin, you'll find that it's an open string, or you can use your finger for it. So you find the first note, and then you want to see what happens. It goes up, da 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 dum. And I often find, and this is why all the other lessons so far have been focused on the voice, that the voice helps you. The voice helps you find it. So I sing the little melody. Da 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 da. The point isn't to sing it beautifully, da da, or whatever, right? The point is you got to hear it in your voice and then transfer it to your fingers. Da da da. If you just want to get the first 3 notes. Okay? Now I want you to notice something in this little phrase. There was a note that changed. And again, you want to listen for this kind of detail. I'm not going to tell you note names because learning by ear is about bypassing that part of your brain that's thinking, oh, okay, this is an A, this is a B, this is a C, right? You want to try to avoid that part of your brain. And you want to just listen. Well, how does it sound? You'll hear da 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 dum, a note change. So when you're done noticing those details, and you maybe get the first part of the phrase, second part of the phrase, let's try that again. And you got those 2 parts. Now let's put them together again. So now you try it. Da 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 dum. Okay. So now I'm assuming that you've got that. If you don't have that yet, just go back and try again. And don't beat yourself up about it. Now I'm going to add the second part of the first phrase. So again, find the opening note. Sing the opening note. That second part of the phrase was this. Started here. You want to always use your voice. Remember where it is. Here. Find it on your instrument. Okay? So here's the phrase again. Did you get that? If you did, great. I'm going to break it down a little bit more for those of you who didn't. First part is, try that. Next part. And then, so let's put those together. And again, this is the whole technique. Try it. Now, you got that part, and we got the first part. So now we're going to go, again, this technique, very simple. It's about going in and then going out. Going in and then going out again. So we're going to add the first and the second part. The first part was, and the second part was. Now, there is always a risk when you break something down that you have trouble with the transitions. And I repeated a note in the middle when I broke it down. So listen for it. Let's try to put it together. Did you get it? If not, go back and try again working through all that stuff. That's the note in the middle, right? That doesn't repeat. Okay? So now that you learned that much of the phrase, and you go back and maybe you recognize from the whole piece, oh, okay. Especially if you're using a recording, you're going to go back and listen. Oh, okay. That phrase repeats 3 times, like this. Okay? So you had 3 repeats of that going up and down phrase with a little tag at the end. So try that, and now we're going to work on the tag. Okay? Pause the video, try to do everything that we just did. If you have trouble, try it a few more times. So let's do the tag. So now, instead of doing all 3 repeats, I'm going to go to the 3rd repeat and then add the tag, and it sounds like this. Okay, so what happened was that the last note of that main phrase was the first note of the tag phrase, right? That note transition. So just like I did last time, I'm going to use that note as our jumping off point. So try that. And if that part was too long for you, again, don't beat yourself up. You're only in, a race against yourself. You're trying to develop your own musical skill. It doesn't matter if you're faster or slower. You'll get there as long as you just keep going. So let's do it slower. Who cares? That's the first part. Try to sing it. Da 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 dum. Da 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 dum. Da 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 dum. And the second part, again using that note as a pivot. Da 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 dum. Da 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 dum. Pause if you need to and try that again. So first part, da 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 dum. And then second part, da 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 dum. Go ahead, try it. So now we try adding them together. Da 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 dum. And let's repeat that a few times just to really get it. Repetition is super important here, right? We learn something and we repeat it. And the repeating it does 2 things. First of all, it makes it stick in our mind more. And second of all, it makes it stick in our fingers. And what we're trying to do when we're learning by ear is we're trying to make a connection between the ear, the brain, and the body. So it all fits together, and the repetition is necessary to bring those things just from your ears into your body, because you need your muscles to learn how to respond to what your ears are telling you. So it doesn't matter. Repeat it as many times as you need to. Enjoy the repetition. One of my teachers really emphasized, have fun with repeating. Repetition gives you a new way of thinking. It gives you a new way of creating. You notice when I repeat, it doesn't happen the same way every time. I added little ornaments. So let's say you got that part, the tag. Let's add it back to the first phrase. And again, this is how you do it. You build one part, then you add it. So we have the first part. And we add. So now let me do that as a whole thing and see if you can do it too. Try it. Okay. Now, let's assume we got that whole thing already, and you're going to add it to the 3 repeats of the whole Dulab. I'm not going to do that for you. I'm going to assume that maybe you want to practice that on your own. We're going to move on to the next section. Right? Maybe that's too much for you. So let's again break it down. Try that. if that's too much for you, let's try a smaller chunk. And again, if you're having trouble, sing it. Dum, dum. Find on your instrument those two notes. Dum, dum. And then add the rhythm. Dum, 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 dum. And the next part was just a little bit coming down. Da, 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 dum. Da, 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 dum. Da, 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 dum, dum, dum. So that's the transitional phrase. Dum, da, 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 dum, dum. Now, I personally, every time I learn a new phrase, I have to go all the way back and add it to everything I've already learned. And the reason that I do that is because what's happening here is you're putting things into short-term memory, and your goal is to get them into long-term memory. And a few repetitions will put them into short-term memory, but then you're using your short-term memory to learn something else. And some of that memory that was in there already goes away. So you are in danger of losing it. You learn something new. Maybe now you know this phrase, but you've forgotten the first one. So you have to really try to put it all together and exercise your longer term memory. So now I'm going to play that for you. Not all 3 repetitions of the first phrase, but the first phrase into the tag, into the transition. All right? So try that much. Try that much with me, actually, this time. I'm going to play it. You play along. Okay. Now, another thing that I like to do is, okay, so I added it all in, but sometimes I want to just work on the transition between the 2 previous phrases. And it's like, you know, you're adding things one to the other. And they're very similar because they're using the same notes. Those 4 notes. So it might be easy to confuse them, so you might want to work on that transition. So here's that transition. Maybe a little tricky. So let's just practice that a few times. And you notice this time I started on this note instead of the first one. I'm just working the transition. Try it. Okay. So there's no rule that you have to start on this note or you have to start on that note. You want to choose whatever is going to work for you in the moment. You want to find out how much is your memory capacity holding, because you're dealing with learning about your process is about engraving something in your memory. It's about using repetition to get your brain cells to make certain connections. Okay? So you got to choose how much are you learning in the moment, how much is being held in your short-term memory. So let's go to the next phrase, which is actually almost the final phrase of the piece. After this. Right, that's how it transitions. You could try that much. I'm going to do the second part because we want to learn that as a whole, because it repeats. And here's how it sounds repeated. I'm going to play the whole thing with a repetition. You can try it, and then I'll break it down. Repeat. Second ending. Okay, so that's the end of the piece. I'm going to now break it down a little bit further. So we're going to start, and I'm going to use, because there's a little bit of a sequence built in here. You hear it? Okay, so that much we're going to learn. And it's a sequence. Da, 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 da. You want to listen for big picture, then little picture. So, first part. Try it. Try it with me this time. I'll play it twice. You listen first time, play along second time. Play along. If you don't have that yet, go back and repeat it a few times. Second part. Try it. Okay, now play along with me the second time. Now I'm assuming you got that now. And let's add those two together. Try that. Here it is again. Try again. Now, you might expect to hear the same thing, but in Arabic music, like in so many other kinds of music, you set up a sequence and you break it the third or the fourth time. It's like a universal principle of music that you'll hear in almost every genre of music. The sequence, da, da, and then the third time something different happens. So you still hear the sequence in the notes, but something different happens in the melody. So listen for that. So the different thing that happened on the third element of the sequence is this. So try that. Da 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 da. Use your voice. Da 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 da. Am I starting the right note? Da. Finding it on my instrument. Da. Okay, now if you've got that, let's add them together. Try again. Okay? Now, there's only two more phrases to learn in the piece. There's a first ending and a second ending to this little repetition part. But at this point in the song, if you've been following along this video and doing the whole thing all at once, I applaud you. Usually, you might want to take some time and repeat the parts you already know. So I'm going to go back one step and do a transition into this part just so we make sure we get it. Transitions are often very challenging if you're breaking things up. So the last phrase before this new part was this. Now, notice I didn't do that whole sequence. I just did the first part of it because we want to practice the transition. So let's practice the transition again. Here it is. Okay, now let's add it to the rest of the sequence. Did you get that? If not, let's try again. Okay. Now let's add the two final tags. That's the first one. Did you get the whole thing? Maybe not. Let's try it. What's the first note? Dum. Starts where the other one left off. Dun 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 dun. Oh, that's easy. It's just a scale going up. Right? You use these little tricks to, oh, okay, it's going up, it's going down. You want to get big picture, little picture. Something else happened. And then there was a little turn. Putting those together. And then a final piece. Hear the rhythm? It's a great phrase to practice that'll give you a feeling of rust. Try it slow. Try it fast. Slow again. Okay? So that's that phrase, and let's add it back to the sequence. See it? So let's repeat that again. And here's where the repeat comes in. Repeat. Final phrase. So now let's do that final phrase. Started where on that note, which by now you should start to hear as the tonic, the resting place of the maqam. Right? This is the note that the whole piece is leading to end on and give you that feeling of resolution. That's the tonic, the final note of the piece. Dum, da, dum, da, 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 dum. Use your voice to get it more easily, especially if you're not used to doing it with your fingers. The voice is direct because you hear, you copy, right? The fingers are, you hear, you send signals to your muscles produce sound. So sometimes it's quicker to just do it with your voice, okay? So do that if it helps you get the whole melody. And you hear it in your head. Da dum da dum da dum da dum dum. Dum, 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 dum. Let's repeat it. Dum, 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 dum. Now, if that was too long on your instrument, again. Bum, bum, bum. Bum, bum, bum. Then bum, 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 bum. Bum, 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 bum. And the final part. Bum, 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 bum. Bum, 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 bum. So let's add those together. Bum, 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 bum. And there's an intentional ritardando, slow down at the end of this. And you notice I'm using little ornaments. It's so typical to use ornaments in these phrases. And when you slow down, it's so easy to put in more ornaments. But if you're not getting them, they're not an essential part of the melody. So you want to make sure that you are gauging how much you're adding of detail, because you don't want to lose the big picture of the whole feeling of the melody to try to get the ornaments. Better to get the melody first and then gradually add in the ornaments through repetition. So if you can do this, then try to add one ornament. Right, I did this. And then try to add another one. I had a little trill on that note. And then try adding another one. Right, the ending one. And you can repeat those things, and of course if you're not playing a violin, you're playing a different kind of instrument, you're going to articulate those ornaments differently. So you want to get the main melody. So now let's add this final melody to the one before it. And here's the one before it. Now maybe by this point, after you learned the final melody, you forgot the one before. Again, this is the issue of short-term versus long-term memory. You might want to go back in the video and repeat those parts. I'm going to repeat that transition one more time for you and try this much. I'll play it twice, you play along with me the second time. Now let's add that ending to the part before it, which was the repeated melody with the other tag. Okay? Now, I like to work backwards. I like to work backwards from the end of pieces. Sometimes I'll even start at the end instead of starting at the beginning, which we did. But I know a lot of people are used to starting at the beginning. I learned something actually from a crazy book called Don't Shoot the Dog, talking about behavioral training. I read this a bunch of years ago. And it talks about how if you're learning a sequence, sometimes if you learn from the end and then you work backwards, you get that feeling of having a strong ending, and you're compelled towards the ending as you add pieces into your memory. I found that really works for me a lot, so sometimes I'll go forwards and then I go backwards. Now I'm going to go backwards a little bit more quickly through the whole piece. It'll take just a few more minutes since you've already spent time going forwards. So let's start. Final phrase. Now let's add the one before that. Now let's add the one before that, which is the repeat with the different ending. Now let's go back. Well, first try that. Maybe pause the video. Now let's go back and add one piece before that, which is this little transitional phrase. Right? Try that again. Now let's add that and go all the way to the end of the piece from there. Okay, now let's go back even one more melody before that. And again, so now I'm helping you out by showing it to you, but if you are learning on your own from a recording, obviously you can just sort of go, earlier in the recording, rewind a little bit, start in an earlier point and work towards the end, whatever you need to do. So I'm going to use the tag from the end of the first phrase, and you're going to see that we're almost done learning this. That's the one we're going to add. Let's try it again. And let's go from there to the end. Okay, now we're ready to add in the first phrase. You actually now probably, if you followed everything along, you've been able to do every phrase. We can put the whole thing together now. Now, if you're just learning it, you just heard this piece for the first time on this video, you never heard this Dulab before, then it may be hard to hold the whole thing together. You might actually want to go listen to the whole thing a few more times. But let's just try. You try playing along with me now. I'm going to play the whole thing from beginning to end. Try to play along, and if you don't get it, that's okay. Just go back, rewind, find different parts of the video, and work on that piece by piece approach. So we're going to take it from beginning to end. So that is what to do. Now, of course, you want to make sure to pause the video, play that on your own several times. Make sure you actually know it without playing along with me. Sometimes people get really good at playing along with the recording, and then when the recording stops, they can't put it together on their own. So it's really important that you try, if you're having trouble with a transitional piece, you find that transition, you go there and you say, okay, I'm having trouble with this transition, for example. Right? So you might want to work on that. Or maybe you're having trouble with, right? Maybe you're confusing them because one part goes in and the other part goes out. You would say, well, this would be a lot easier if I just saw it on the notation with first ending, second ending. No. You want to train your mind to have the long-term memory to hold the whole piece in your head. I know hundreds of pieces in my head. This is a simple one. Experienced musicians in all genres of music around the world, other than classical music, have hundreds of pieces in their head. That's how you become a good musician, is you memorize hundreds, if not thousands. When I read George Sawa's book about the Abbasid period in the Arab Empire, 9th, 10th century, you had these singers who knew 10,000 songs, 20,000 songs, 40,000 songs. That's the standard. And I'm not there, and most people alive today are not there because we're not steeped in that culture. So I always feel that for myself, okay, I have more to learn. I need to get to 40,000 songs memorized, which I'm never going to do in my lifetime. Anyway, but so there's always something to go forward. So you really want to force yourself to really try to do it without the recording, and then with the recording, and then without the recording. You go back and forth to build that memory. Now, if you've done that already, I have an assignment for you, if you choose to accept it, which is to try it in a different key. So what we did there was Rust on C. I'm going to play it for you whole in a different key, okay? And I'm going to do Rust on F, which I like. And you're going to try to use this recording and break it down piece by piece. Now, maybe you learned it well enough on C that you can transpose it to F easily. Maybe you don't have that skill set yet and your ears aren't quite there and you want to break down this recording. So I'm going to play it whole, but you can use the same method, pause a part of the recording. Okay, I need to work on that transition. But here it is in F. Now, you'll notice in this entire recording I haven't talked about the notes or the intonation of the notes. You want to focus on the intonation of the notes by ear. You should, if you haven't yet, go and listen to the recording, lesson 1 on Jins Rast. And Maqam Kirdan, Maqam Suznak, which we've already done in these series of lessons, to start to get a feeling for the intonation of Rast. Now, because I was practicing along with a Syrian recording, my intonation of my Rast 3rd degree is a little higher now for this piece. That's 1, 2, 3. It's more of a Syrian intonation of Rast, and this is very popular Dulab in Syria. They use it in Egypt too, but the intonation of that note is different than Ghanili. You hear that note? Okay, so I'm not going to tell you because you can measure that note with a machine and you can decide what it is, but the key is you want to hear those notes and play them exactly as you hear them. This is some of the information that is lost through notation. The difference between the Syrian A half flat and the Egyptian A half flat. That's an A half flat. F, G, A half flat, slightly high in this case. Okay? So that's, one more detail for you to pay attention to. And that's really it for the lesson. Comment and like below. If you want me to do more of these things where I teach you how to learn a simple piece by ear, let me know in the comments. I'll be happy to make a few more of these. I'm not going to do too many because I think once you learn once, you can use that skill set to do others. But if you really want me to do this, I'll do some more. I really appreciate all the followers. Please subscribe. I'm doing lessons, trying every week, but a couple times a month. And we're going to be working towards lessons for the entire Maqam system. About 60 or so lessons that you can practice with. So definitely subscribe to catch those updates when they come out. Like, comment below, and support me on Patreon. You'll see the link down below, and I'll put the link for Brooklyn Maqam down below. Check them out. They're awesome. And thank you very much for watching this video and for trying to learn music by ear and learning Arabic music. That's fantastic. It's wonderful of you. All right. Have a great day. Oh, there it is.